Pray your league mates don't see this video if you want to win in 2024. I'm going to break down from start to finish my exact strategy for fantasy football drafts. Not only will you see the #1 draft strategy in action, but we'll take a look at ADP and I'll tell you who the best and worst picks are in each round. Let's start with round 1 and setting the foundation. Round 1 is when you lay the foundation for your entire draft strategy. The key is to have a plan and stick to it, tailoring your approach to your specific draft position. 2024 looks like a strong season for the anchor running back strategy. It means drafting one stud running back in the first 2 rounds and then stocking up on pass catchers until after round 7. If you're picking in the top 3, you have a fantastic array of options. But there's less room for error with many picks between your first and second round selections, so let's take another look at Fantasy Life's ADP with the top 12 players in the round and how to consider them. Christian McCaffrey is a consensus first pick thanks to his guaranteed opportunity share and exceptional performance in the passing game. He's finished as the RB1 or RB2 in points per game in his last 4 healthy seasons. If you have the first overall pick, CMC is a great choice. But obviously, he's not the only strong choice in round 1, given that most leagues use PPR and half PPR rules. 17 of the top 24 projected picks are wide receivers. 49% of running backs selected in round 1 return top 10 value. The number for wide receivers is 60%, so unless you're set on CMC, the odds favor pivoting to a wide receiver. After CMC, there's a mini run of top wideouts. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, they're can't miss picks. Lamb finished as 2023's wide receiver 1, but Hill's been in the top 6 every year since 2020, making him a reliable choice. Mid-round, Amon-Ra St. Brown stands out over Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Amon-Ra was 5th in the league with 164 targets and averaged 20.7 fantasy points per game, ranking 4th. Chase's performance hinges on Joe Burrow's health, while Jefferson's production could suffer due to a less stable quarterback situation this year. He'll catch passes from either bridge veteran Sam Darnold or rookie JJ McCarthy. As the round progresses, Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall are the next running back options. Bijan is expected to see significant usage, showcasing his skills. Hall demonstrated his potential last year with a heavy workload. So rounding out the first round are AJ Brown, Puka Nacua, and Garrett Wilson at wide receiver, followed by Jahmyr Gibbs at running back. Of this group, I prefer Puka Nacua. He set rookie records in catches and receiving yards and is poised to continue his growth in year 2. Gibbs, while talented, might be too costly in the first round due to competition for touches with David Montgomery. Montgomery took 53% of the Lions' carries and finished 5th in red zone touches last year. According to my strategy, I recommend drafting a wide receiver in round 1 unless CMC is available. My favorite picks are Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Puka Nacua, depending on my draft position. My least favorite pick in the round is Jahmyr Gibbs, given his high cost and competition for touches. The round 2 ADP list continues to be dominated by wide receivers. It starts with Cardinals rookie Marvin Harrison Jr., even though he's a top-tier prospect stepping into a promising situation in Arizona. The 13th pick, that's a bit expensive. Drake London, priced correctly, offers hope with Atlanta's new regime and established talent at quarterback. Jonathan Taylor is a solid pick, given his volume upside with the Colts, but a mini run of wide receiver follows, starting with Chris Olave, who can improve in his second year with Derek Carr, especially if their deep balls connect at a higher rate. Nico Collins, paired with CJ Stroud, also looks promising. However, the round gets tricky with Deebo Samuel at 18th, followed by teammate Brandon Ayuk at 21st. Ayuk's trade request creates some uncertainty, making it risky to pick either way at this stage. Devontae Adams and Jalen Waddle fall between them. Adams' situation with Las Vegas's inaccurate quarterbacks makes him a weaker pick than in the past, but everyone seems to overvalue Jalen Waddle. He's got wide receiver 1 talent, but finishes the wide receiver 34 due to the massive gap between himself and Tyreek Hill, so as long as they share the field, the second round pick is too much for Waddle. Saquon Barkley, on the other hand, stands out. His new situation with the Eagles, a run-heavy team, positions him as a potential steal towards the end of the second round. Mike Evans is consistent in exceeding 1,000 yards. He's a reliable choice that you can set your watch to. Devon Achane's league-leading yards per carry make him an intriguing option to close out the round, but he does carry injury risk. For round 2, my favorite pick is Saquon, who offers a clear path to top production. My least favorite is Jalen Waddle. His value is inflated by his talent, but he lacks a clear path to wide receiver 1 value while sharing the field with Tyreek Hill. But I send all my research early via email to 15,000 plus fantasy players, so check the link in the description if you want me to add you to the list. In round 3, we're focused on strengthening our core. So far, I've secured a top wide receiver and a top running back with my first 2 picks. In round 3, I'll focus on adding another wide receiver to ensure a strong, reliable core of weekly starters. This aligns with the consensus among fantasy players. The ADP list for this round features only 2 running backs. The importance of drafting a top wide receiver early becomes clear when we look at the shakier options in this round. This round kicks off a group that includes Devonta Smith and Cooper Kupp. Both of them will be competing for targets with their round 1 teammates. Kupp in particular is showing some signs of age and fragility and has clearly been passed already by Puka Nacua. DK Metcalf, while seemingly priced correctly, has stats over the past 3 years that closely resemble those of Tyler Lockett, who goes multiple rounds later. Rookie Malik Neighbors has big potential, but his success will depend on Daniel Jones, who averaged just 10.5 points per game in 6 appearances last season. Next up are 2 running backs, Kyren Williams and Derrick Henry. Williams, at least with his youth, appeals to me more than Henry, who's accumulated significant mileage for his large frame over recent seasons. However, Henry's move to Baltimore could potentially work out for him. The round continues with another uncertain group of wide receivers. DJ Moore, coming off a career year in 2023, now faces competition from Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. Meanwhile, the Texans' wide receiver situation is too unsettled for me to invest a 3rd-round pick in Stephon Diggs or Tank Dell. Michael Pittman might be the most reliable receiver in this group. Still, I have reservations about Anthony Richardson, who has only 4 NFL starts under his belt. Zay Flowers, wide receiver 31 in points per game last season, will be sharing Lamar's attention with Mark Andrews. So the round's final choice may be its most intriguing, Sam Laporta, the first tight end off the board. Laporta had an incredible rookie season, but his value might be inflated by his 10 touchdowns, which were 4 more than the next highest scoring tight end. So round 3 feels unsteady. My favorite pick for value is Kyren Williams, but if I've already secured my anchor back, I'll go with DJ Moore. My least favorite pick in this round is Stephon Diggs, who's likely to get lost in Houston's crowded wide receiver room. If Fantasy Life's ADP is any indication, round 4 often sees a run of perceived best quarterbacks. While I'm not entirely opposed to this strategy, I still believe it's wiser to hold off on drafting a QB. You might miss out on Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, but the depth at the position in later rounds allows you to continue strengthening your pass catching options. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson all have round 4 ADPs at the moment. Allen and Hurts finished as 1st and 2nd in fantasy last season, with Jackson ranking 4th. However, the value return for quarterbacks in this range isn't as substantial as you might think. The difference in points per game between Lamar Jackson and this year's 8th drafted quarterback Dak Prescott was just 0.4. Dak actually outscored Lamar over the entire season and is currently available at the end of round 8. By contrast, consider the difference between wide receivers Amari Cooper and Curtis Samuel. They're spaced in ADP just like Jackson and Prescott, but Cooper was the PPR wide receiver 15, while Samuel finished as the wide receiver 42, with Cooper outscoring him by over 5 fantasy points per game. This highlights that you can add more scoring value to your roster by punting on quarterback this early. Other round 4 options include Travis Kelce, who's been the tight end 1 or tight end 2 in points per game every year since 2016. He's a solid pick here. That 3rd tight end, Trey McBride, projects to be the lead receiver for the Cardinals and is also worth considering. At running back, Isaiah Pacheco and Travis Etienne have some appeal, but I recommend sticking with the strategy of waiting on a 2nd running back. Instead, I favor Christian Kirk. He projects as the clear-cut wide receiver 1 for Jacksonville with Calvin Ridley gone. Kirk was on his way to a top 20 finish last season before nagging injuries caught up with him. Both round 4 tight ends look promising, but Kirk seems to be the best value pick in this round. My least favorite picks in round 4 are any of the quarterbacks. The value just isn't there compared to the later round options. Before we get back at it, you should know my mission is to make premium fantasy football information accessible to everyone. I'm here to save you time and make you sound smarter to your friends. So if you're ready to take that next step in 2024 and finally win your fantasy football league, I've helped thousands of people do just that using my draft guide. For a limited time, you can get the guide for free. Just check the first link in the description for more details. Round 5 is where I start to feel much more comfortable looking at tight ends. While I don't like Patrick Mahomes this early, Mark Andrews is a fantastic value if he stays healthy. Andrews' fantasy points per game were better than all but 21 wide receivers, and we've already drafted over 30 at this point. Dalton Kincaid is another tight end I like. He was tight end 1 when Dawson Knox didn't play. Now he has the added benefit of playing without Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, making him a high upside pick. Hollywood Brown's move to the Chiefs makes him interesting here, especially if Rashee Rice faces suspension. Keenan Allen is a solid pick as well, pending Caleb Williams' transition to the pros. Jaden Reed is expected to become Jordan Love's #1 wideout this season. However, I'm less bullish on Calvin Ridley, who was already inconsistent for Jacksonville last season. Now he faces potential competition in Tennessee with DeAndre Hopkins, so I'd be wary of chasing his former glory. Anthony Richardson's high AP is perplexing to me. He'll likely be a bust at this spot. His rushing ability was impressive in his 4 games, but it's just too small of a sample size, and his passing accuracy remains questionable. I'm still passing on quarterbacks on this round. James Cook isn't ready to be my second running back, but Chris Godwin is acceptable at this price. Finally, I like Kyle Pitts here at the end of the round. With Kirk Cousins and the new coaching staff, Pitts should realize more of his freak athletic talent in 2024. Looking at this round as a whole, Andrews and Pitts are my favorite picks. Conversely, I absolutely hate Anthony Richardson at this price. Round 6 shows signs of leaving the running back dead zone, starting with Joe Mixon, who's been a solid contributor in fantasy for years. Despite showing some decline last season, Mixon finished as the running back 11 in points per game. However, his situation in Houston poses some risks. The Texans system favors fewer passes to running backs, and Dameon Pierce has impressed in team workouts. I'm also staying away from Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy until the suspension situation is clarified. Rachaad White has all the volume of top back, but lacks lacks efficiency. George Kittle looks to be a great value at this stage, especially if the 49ers grant Brandon Ayuk a trade request. CJ Stroud also looks decent here. He was 10th in points per game as a rookie, and we can reasonably expect him to improve on that in his second season. Toward the later part of the round, I prefer to short my wide receiver position. DeAndre Hopkins should be drafted ahead of Calvin Ridley, even though he's 32 years old. Roma Dunze and Ladd McConkey are rookies who could contribute immediately. I like McConkey more since he'll be catching passes from proven Justin Herbert and faces less target competition than Odunze. Deontay Johnson should attract a lot more targets again, despite a shaky team outlook. But my favorite value in the round is Christian Watson, who had long stretches last season as Jordan Love's first read and showed chops down the field. He ranks 6th in ADOT and 22nd in yards per reception, even with a bad hamstring. As I'm still building a solid wide receiver core, I'm looking for Watson for another cheap piece of depth. On the other hand, I'm probably avoiding Kenneth Walker here in the 6th. While I don't mind him as a running back 3 flex option, there are guys in the next couple of rounds that I'd prefer. I don't love his upside with Zach Charbonnet advancing in his career. Entering round 7, the value of wide receivers starts to wane. Up to this point, I've drafted 4 wide receivers and a tight end, so I'm comfortable pivoting to quarterback and running back positions to flesh out my starting lineup. The wide receivers in the 7th are difficult to trust. Brian Thomas was a monster receiver at LSU, but scouting suggests he isn't quite ready. Jackson Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison are second-year players with upside, but both have questions in their respective situations. Keon Coleman is unproven, even if he is going to play with Josh Allen, and has the opportunity for targets. So running back is my choice for value in this stretch. David Montgomery had 53 red zone touches, leading to 13 touchdowns last season. He's the other half of the Jahmyr Gibbs platoon in Detroit. Alvin Kamara finished 3rd in points per game due to his tremendous receiving work, but I predict a decline for him. My favorite running back target in this round is Aaron Jones. Now in his first season with the Vikings, Jones had one of his weaker seasons in 2023, but built excellent momentum towards the end. He averaged over 120 scrimmage yards per game from week 15 through the playoffs, showing he still has a lot left. I also think Ramondre Stevenson might be ranked a bit low here. He's enjoyed the 12th ranked target share and had a respectable 1.13 yards per route run before getting hurt. So for my running back 2, Jones and Stevenson are my targets in this round. However, because I like the running back options in round 8, I may also consider Kyler Murray. He was recovering from a difficult ACL injury last season, but over his career, he's been a strong fantasy quarterback, averaging nearly 40 rushing yards per game. He now has a fortified offense with Marvin Harrison Jr. and the emergence of Trey McBride at tight end. If I don't go with Jones or Stevenson, I might pull the trigger on Murray here. My least favorite pick of round 7 is Jordan Addison. He was viable at times last year, but didn't have the volume when Kirk Cousins was out with injury. It will likely happen again this season unless Justin Jefferson gets hurt. My decisions in round 8 hinge on whether I draft my running back 2 in round 7. If I did, I'm going to go with the quarterback. If not, I'm looking at running back here. Zamir White and James Conner are my favorites here. Conner is perpetually underrated, having been an RB1 or RB2 in points per game in 5 of his last 6 seasons. White ran like his hair was on fire last season when the Raiders gave him a full workload. Jonathan Brooks also has a shot to contribute right away in Carolina. This could be the year Jaylen Warren overtakes Najee Harris. They had an almost identical snap share last year, and Harris's efficiency numbers continue to decline. Zach Moss is an interesting option in Cincinnati, where he could replace Joe Mixon's production. Raheem Mostert was electric last season with the Dolphins, but it's not likely he'll score as many touchdowns this year at 32 years old, so I'd be cautious there. I love the quarterback options in the 8th. Joe Burrow struggled at times last season, obviously with some health concerns, but was quarterback 4 in points per game in 22 with 21.7. He's healthy this season and could return to top fantasy form. I don't understand Dak Prescott's ADP at all. He's coming off the best statistical season of his career and was the fantasy quarterback 3. If you grab him with the final pick of the 8th round, you've found yourself a terrific value. Once again, I don't love the wide receiver value in this round. Courtland Sutton was uninspiring last season as wide receiver 38 in points per game, and the jury's out on Bo Nix as quarterback. Jameson Williams makes a decent spot start at times, but there's no consistency there. So I feel good about my decision to load up on wide receivers in the earlier rounds. After 8 rounds, round 9 is about simmering potential. I filled out my starting lineup with a quarterback, 2 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and a tight end. These players will likely make up my opening week roster. Now it's time to build depth and look for sleepers with breakout potential. I'm holding off on drafting a defense and a kicker until the final rounds, if at all, if your league will allow that, but I'm focusing instead on skill positions and possibly a backup quarterback if it really comes to that point. Round 9 is filled with players brimming with potential. Brock Bowers is a legitimate sleeper tight end who could step in immediately and make a fine pickup, especially as a second option. David Njoku, a few picks later, is just as good of a choice. Jordan Love was last season's quarterback 5, yet here he is, drafted as the 10th one off the board. Value is starting to return to the wide receiver position in the 9th. Tyler Lockett has been a discount DK Metcalf for consecutive seasons. Their difference in draft position does not properly reflect the similar output. The Chargers clearing out Keenan Allen and Mike Williams could benefit Joshua Palmer, and the Saints extended Rashid Shaheed, indicating his value to their plans this season. The round 9 running backs don't excite me much, but there is some upside here. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears both have a shot to emerge as the number one guy in Tennessee, given Derrick Henry's departure. He left a lot of carries up for grabs. Brian Robinson should get the bulk of the early down work for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels is my favorite sleeper pick of the round. Assuming you already have a starting quarterback, the Heisman winner threw 40 touchdowns for just 4 interceptions last season and is a threat with his legs. He could easily be a better Anthony Richardson if things break right. But my least favorite pick of the round is Khalil Shakir, who's a spot start in fantasy some weeks, but lacks consistency. So I'm fading a lot of Bills skill position players this season. Round 10 starts with a running back who could be a sneaky good pick in 2024. Devin Singletary has joined the Giants to take over for Saquon Barkley. While I don't expect Barkley level output, Singletary is just 26 and has plenty of left in the tank. Last season, he took over for Dameon Pierce as the running back one in Houston. With 6 finishes as an RB1 or RB2 and an average of 19 touches per game in the second half, Barkley left behind the second highest opportunity share for Singletary to grab. I also like Trey Benson as a sleeper pick. He'll begin the season as a backup, but if James Conner misses time, Benson will be the guy. So he's a player to watch as the summer progresses. Looking at the quarterbacks, I'm not ready to draft Caleb Williams. He has terrific pass catchers in Chicago, but let's wait and see for fantasy. Brock Purdy and Trevor Lawrence feel like stronger picks. Purdy was the QB6 overall and QB8 in points per game, showcasing yet another example of misinterpreted quarterback value. At wide receiver in round 10, I like Jacoby Myers and Brandon Cooks. Myers is the direct wide receiver 2 alongside Devontae Adams, offering plenty of matchup weeks to exploit. Cooks is the wide receiver 2 on an explosive offense, but might be behind Jake Ferguson in targets. Either way, he'd be a solid depth pick here. The best round 10 value overall is Singletary, while my least favorite is Dallas Goedert. His durability is a concern, and there's too much touch competition in Philadelphia for confidence in his chances. It feels like Goddard is on his way out as a fantasy asset. Round 11 continues our depth building focus. The running backs in this round are weaker, but this is the lottery ticket part of the draft. Ezekiel Elliott gets a boost as the projected starter in Dallas. He lost a step last season in New England, but still had a nose for the end zone, something Tony Pollard lacked. It's strange to see Austin Eckler's name so low in ADP. Falling to the 11th round is drastic, especially without an injury. He could represent a nice upgrade in Washington over Antonio Gibson and handled much of the passing work, but beware of drafting players solely on name and reputation. Nick Chubb is a possibility in that same vein as your running back 3 or running back 4. He's expected to start the season on the PUP list, however. Before the injury last year, he ranked 10th or better in fantasy points per game for 4 straight seasons. We could see him return to form, but we still don't know. 2 quarterbacks in this range, Tua Tagovailoa and Jared Goff, ranked 7th and 9th in fantasy last season. Goff was more usable when the Lions played at home, showing better splits there. Tua had peak weeks, but lacked consistency with the Dolphins. Neither has significant running upside, explaining their low rankings, but they could still deliver strong weeks to help your team. So take a look at them this late in the draft for some needed quarterback depth if you need it. Dalton Schultz is the lone tight end in this range. He scored double-digit fantasy points per game and represents 9-11's best value. The weakest pick is Jerry Jeudy, who's found himself in Cleveland playing second fiddle to Amari Cooper. Jeudy has skill, but struggles to find the end zone, so he'll need to build good rapport with Deshaun Watson to be viable in fantasy this season. Round 12 is where things start to get a lot weaker. As we look this far in the draft, more and more of these players will start to look like dart throws. There are a few of them here that are worth the draft pick, however, but for the most part, this round is full of players who will end up on the waiver wire, so unless someone gets injured, many of these guys are stashes or bye-week pickups. I'll start with the players I don't mind looking at in this round. Pat Freiermuth looks fine here. He has a shot to become a top 12 tight end again, depending on how the new Steelers offensive situation plays out. He was a tight end 1 in 2022, despite only finding the end zone twice, so the skill is there. Justin Herbert would also be a fine pickup here if you needed a quarterback. He was quarterback 11 in points per game back in 2023, but he's lost his most talented receivers this year, and his team has undergone a downgrade at running back as well. Still, he's been considered a top talent since entering the league and could return some value as a late round quarterback. The big concern there is if they end up being extremely run heavy under their new regime. Beyond them, I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Marshawn Lloyd of the Packers. Reports out of summer workouts are that Lloyd looks ready to play and may challenge Josh Jacobs for reps. Finally, Jalen Polk of the Patriots has a shot to emerge as the team's first target. He's considered a solid receiver with NFL-ready skills. The team has a murky quarterback situation, but the opportunity to be the main receiver is wide open, so he's worth a look. Other than that, I don't love the picks presented here in the 12th. Johan Dotson and Cole Kmet are familiar names, but there's no telling where their production might end up this year with rookie quarterbacks and new faces around them. Rico Dowdle may also be viable given Ezekiel Elliott's age and declining skill set. The weakest pick of this round, though, is Gabe Davis. He's now with the Jaguars, but I don't see him becoming consistent overnight. The 13th round paints a familiar picture. The available running backs are primarily backups, starting with Ty Chandler of the Vikings. While he might get some work behind Aaron Jones, Chandler didn't make much of an impact last season. His committee role with Alexander Mattison was a bust, thus he's mainly a dart throw stash at this point in the draft. In contrast, Jaleel McLaughlin and Kamani Vidal offer clearer pass to relevance. McLaughlin appeared more explosive than Javonte Williams last season, but he'll need to earn his playing time time to become a viable fantasy starter. Vidal will compete in LA with former Raven Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, both of whom have produced before, but also faced significant injuries. Therefore, Vidal could have a role from the get-go. The quarterbacks in this round hold some value. Kirk Cousins joins a talented laden team featuring Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, along with a solid offensive line. However, at 36 and recovering from an Achilles injury, his rebound is uncertain. Matthew Stafford, now a streamer, saw a significant increase in touchdown production late in 2023, making him a viable quarterback 2 option or an option in 2 quarterback leagues. Receivers here are deeper dart throws led by Jermaine Burton of the Bengals, currently the 3rd wide receiver behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Burton's upside is capped, but there is speculation about the team moving on from Higgins, but no substantial developments there yet. The best picks of round 13 are the tight ends, especially TJ Hawkinson. He led the NFL in tight end target percentage in 2023 and was 2nd in points per game. However, he's not expected to be back until around Halloween after a knee injury. If drafted, he'll occupy a bench spot for a while with the hope of strong late season production. Lastly, the least inspiring pick is Jalen Wright. As a rookie, he's behind Devin Achane and Raheem Mostert, who formed the best 1-2 punch in football last season. While Mostert is 32, offering Wright some potential if things decline, for now, he's the best left on the board. Round 14 holds a few backup running backs like Tyler Algier and Chuba Hubbard. Both are established on their teams, but expected to play secondary roles. Hubbard has a better chance to contribute due to uncertainty surrounding Jonathan Brooks' development, but Algier is firmly behind Bijan Robinson, so neither will start for your fantasy team right away. Hunter Henry offers some value at this stage. He ranked 9th in air yard share and 3rd in ADOT last season, finishing 15th in points per game. Although the Patriots' limited passing game hurt his output, an improved quarterback situation could make Henry a viable fantasy asset at a low draft cost. The rest of the round, only a couple players are worth considering. Wan'Dale Robinson, who led the Giants in target percentage in 2023, might have some matchup appeal, but rookie Malik Neighbors is already overshadowing him. Adam Thielen remains a steady presence in fantasy football, still capable of finding the end zone. Still, he's behind Deontay Johnson on the depth chart, who is a target magnet. The quarterbacks available are somewhat washed up. Aaron Rodgers has the best chance to regain fantasy relevance, largely due to his Hall of Fame pedigree, but Geno Smith declined last year after a career season in 2022, and Deshaun Watson may never return to his previous productivity. Many leagues require drafting a defense and kicker, but I prefer to save these positions for the last 2 rounds and stream them throughout the year. The kicker position is particularly unpredictable, with kicker 1 and kicker 12 separated by fewer than 2 fantasy points per game in 2023. This volatility makes it more advantageous to focus on skill positions. Top kickers might be off the board by the final round, but targeting accurate players on good offenses like those from the Cowboys, Ravens, and Chiefs is key. A stronger roster can mitigate kicker variability though. Defenses can be more valuable, but still depend on weekly matchups. The defense 1 and defense 12 differed by 2.6 points per game last season. Consistency is challenging, so streaming defenses based on favorable matchups is preferred. Focus on teams with weaker offensive lines, prioritizing sacks and turnovers. But you can do that on the waiver wire. The Ravens, Cowboys, and Jets are top choices heading into 2024 if you get there. Use this round by round strategy to crush your draft and build a winning team. But we're not done yet. My next video will go into more detail on the optimal start of drafts. My exact system for this area of drafts has helped thousands of people save time and win their leagues, so you won't want to miss it. And make sure you hit subscribe. My mission is to make premium fantasy football information accessible to everyone.